It's about time I addressed Grail Knights. It's pretty clear to everyone by now that they have been pretty severely overbuffed. I definitely appreciate the intent of the design to make them into more of a monstrous cavalry, but I do definitely think, and it's obvious to everyone, that Creative Assembly went a bit too far on certain things. We'll talk more about the specifics in just a minute, but today we've got this replay from Romulan Dog. Basically, he's only brought one Grail Knight. He's also got Alberic up in the air, plus one of the newly buffed Royal Hippogriff Knights as well, which is nice to see. He's got some peasant mobs here, some archers, just regular peasant bowmen, and a Damsel of Life up against a very tall Lizardman build rocking the Shredder of Lustria. Very cool choice, and at times has been very good against Bretonnia, especially specific builds. One Sacred Croc score, Salon of Life, and 3 Temple Guards up front, including the Regiment of Renown, Star Chamber Guardians in the center. Magic attacks no longer as effective against Blessing of the Lady now that it gives damage resistance, and that's definitely one of the buffs. Although I think the biggest thing for Grail Knights, and this is based on some discussions with Creative Assembly developers, basically it's just a compounding of several effects together, especially the acceleration, I think, is the main culprit. Them getting that acceleration buff on top of everything else means that, like, combined with a large entity size, for example, they can pretty much accelerate through infantry infinitely for the most part. They don't really get stopped up by them at all, which is obviously a little bit of a problem. Even other monstrous cavalry don't behave that way, and it's obviously not intended that that should be the case. But let's see how they do here. Alberic is going to drop down with these Hippogriff Knights onto the Sacred Croxagores. Hippos, of course, also have perfect vigor, and I believe they also get Blessing of the Lady? Yeah, so they actually do have that damage resistance now. Of course, anti-large from Alberic, who has a little bit of a buff. Braid of Bordello gives more anti-large than it did before, so they're going to absolutely wreck those Sacred Croc scores, but obviously the Shredder is just going wherever it wants for the time being. Grail Knight's kind of deployed out on this side here, so it basically doesn't have anything to oppose it. Salon also unleashing this nice banishment here to disrupt the peasants, make sure they can't get cohesive firing line on the Shredder, which is one of the main dangers to this big monster in this matchup. Historically has been kind of mass peasant archer fire, especially combined with the key armor debuff. Potentially, I mean, it's a little bit rare to see that, but just generally the mass of archers in combination with other things can be dangerous, so we see the disruption here from the Rev Crystal and Shredder, of course, lots of healing as well. Alberic's going to drop in to try and snipe the Salon, but Star Chamber Guardians nearby, it's going to be a pretty fruitless endeavor. We'll see when the Grail Guardians pull back around, and I will say, you know, I haven't had a chance to play this patch very much myself. I've been quite busy since 3.1 dropped, unfortunately, but I am largely relying on other players who I consider reliable sources of information on this, and I mean, the community outcry on Grail Knights has been pretty significant, and definitely expect them to get a nerf in the next patch. I just hope that Creative Assembly doesn't go too far with the nerfs. I definitely, again, I like the design intent of making Grail Knights and Grail Guardians more of monstrous cavalry. I just think it needs to be maybe communicated by increasing their size. I don't know if you can give them the same animations as the Chaos Knights, if that would even make sense, but maybe use something similar to, I don't know, maybe increase their size perhaps, or otherwise give more of a visual indicator. And then obviously, of course, straight nerfs for Grail Knights, maybe to their acceleration, maybe to their armor as well, put them down to 110 instead of 120. And just generally, I think the armor could be maybe scaled back in light of Blessing of the Lady on a number of other units as well. Maybe a discussion for another day, but so far the Grail Knights haven't really been used in any really incredible, obscene way. In this particular battle, it's been mostly just kind of glancing around outside targets. They've got, yeah, not too much damage value even yet, but with that lance formation especially giving them that extra mass, they are going to be basically completely unimpeded, as we'll see in just a minute when they're going to get a charge into these Temple Guards. But considering how strong Bretonnia is, I have to say, Romulan Dog taking a somewhat restrained build here is definitely helping the Lizardmen to a degree, and also, yeah, I mean, it's definitely taking some damage. Temple Guards are certainly a tough unit, but Alberic getting in here with these Hippogriff Knights. Nice charge in. Slán pops all of his defensive buffs and some healing to try and hold himself in the fight. But here's the moment you all have been waiting for. So just check out how these Grail Knights just basically practically phase through the entire unit of Temple Guards. And keep in mind that Temple Guards are some of the highest mass infantry in the game. 210 mass is very heavy. Their animations also make them fairly tough to knock over. I don't know if they have some knockdown resistance as well. I'd have to actually check that, but in general, they are some of the toughest units in the game to consistently knock over. Like, I would definitely recommend against using chariots for the most part against Lizardmen because of that fact. But here we see the Grail Knights literally just walk straight through them. So that's obviously not intended and is a problem. And means that the Grail Knights, it seems to be less of a problem with the Guardians. I don't know, maybe because there's less models. I haven't really, again, tested it too much for myself. I'm mostly relying on secondhand information on this, but I certainly see in the replays I have seen that that has been the case. So we're going to speed this up a little bit through the second phase, as there's a fair amount of cycle charging to be done by Bretonnia. Some archers also kind of teetering out there in the distance. Peasant mobs making their attack runs here. Ultimately fruitless, obviously, but Albric and the Hippogriff Knights smartly finishing off the Slán so he can't come back in and heal, especially the Dread Saurian anymore. Rev Crystal is doing what it can, and if we take a look at the charges left on its ability, it has 3 charges left there, or heals, so a decent amount of potential healing left, but the Slán goes down, and the Grail Knights, which have again just kind of been chasing, routing Temple Guard, have been kind of rear charging in various pockets, have taken some damage in the process, up to only 800 value so far. But Romulan being very patient about how he plays this, as he is slightly behind on the balance of power, and again, despite Bretonnia's power, he doesn't actually have that many of their super broken units. So he's relying just on the one here, but let's see, charging straight into a block of Temple Guard. Only some of them are braced. The Regiment Renown was definitely not braced there. They were countercharging, but still, they basically have no problems cycling in and out there. And I mean, some heavy cavalry enjoyers, myself included, definitely in some ways love to see that. But from a game balance perspective, if I'm being honest, not the greatest feeling in the world. If they had all been braced, I think the Grail Knights still just charge straight through them, which is a problem. I mean, if they're unbraced, I feel like I have less of a problem with that interaction happening as it did there, but I don't know. You guys, let me know in the comments how you feel. I definitely think that they should not be able to just full charge send through, like, double block brace halberds, right? Yeah, anyway. I have heard reports, though. I haven't seen too many replays myself, but I have definitely heard reports that monstrous cavalry and infantry, obviously, will have the mass to stop up Grail Knights and generally perform much better against them, but infantry are basically might as well not exist when it comes to Grail Knights' perspective, and because of that armor-piercing damage, they can just absolutely murder most units. Pretty much all infantry units, I would imagine, but anyway, we're going to continue to fast forward here as Romulan Dog cycle charges, moving on into minute 10, finally has an engagement where he can get a full in charge and surround with these Grail Knights, with the Hippogriff Knights, and with Albric all working together to try and finish off the big old Dread Saurian here, and its leadership tanks down fairly quickly as it breaks. Temple Guard also get absolutely smashed and eviscerated there, so a rough day to be a Lizardman, but Ramen Dog, obviously, it manages to pull it out there in the end, and I'm honestly not surprised. The Grail Knights could have carried, I mean, between the two of these units, could have carried a lot of this by themselves. The Hippogriffs actually end up doing a lot of the true value damage, as does Albric here, and I guess that's mostly just from going after, like, these more expensive single entities. But the Grail Knights obviously still wanted to highlight them, and especially just that one moment of just absolutely pretending like Temple Guard didn't exist as they ran through basically the entire unit. I think they literally maybe made contact with every single unit model when they made that attack. So yeah, definitely not intended, and hopefully gets tuned back, but not too far. I definitely want Grail Knights to be the best in class at this new unit cost. So in my opinion, they should beat stuff like, you know, Skull Crushers. Ogre Crushers are a little bit more expensive, so maybe they should, you know, if not beat, at least trade well with. I don't know, I guess beat straight up because they do cost more, but let's just take a look at some comparisons. So we'll look at Guardians another day. Let's just focus on Grail Knights for the time being at 1700. So if we think about other cavalry in that cost, I mean, Chaos Dwarfs, I haven't really examined too much. Bull Centaur Renders have been nerfed, but definitely should lose to them. Or I should lose to Grail Knights, right? I should say. The Demonics, yeah, I mean, Blood Crushers are more of an anti-infantry focus. They're also a little bit cheaper, so definitely should lose. Again, if I kind of go through and think equally costed, sort of elite tier cavalry, Dark Elves, Dread Knights don't really come close. Demigryph Knights also right now are sort of a tier below in terms of cost, so I would expect them to lose definitely. The Skull Crushers is one. They are same cost, but again, because Bretonnia is quote-unquote the best cavalry faction in the game, me personally, it's completely excusing lore, because you can pretty much make whatever lore argument you want, is what I've learned over the years of doing this channel. Yeah, I've seen them all. But yeah, I think that Bretonnia as the cavalry faction should have cavalry that can beat equally costed cavalry of other factions, so Skull Crushers should lose, I think. Grail Knights, that's just, again, my own opinion. Same thing for, like, Warbear Riders, right? They are a little bit cheaper as well. Not too much, but slightly. And there's not really a lot else to contest at that cost range. We'll just kind of skip to Ogres, because I think that's the most interesting one. Crushers are 200 points more expensive than Grail Knights, obviously. But should they beat them? I think probably yes, they should, to be honest. But maybe Grail Knights with the right magical support can win. Or, you know, maybe in a rare instance of getting really good dice rolls, maybe they can win also, or like depending on who gets the better charge, perhaps. It's just it's an interesting comparison to make, certainly, but Grail Knights definitely are overperforming even from where they are right now, so we just need to tune them back so that they're the best cavalry at 1700, not the best cavalry anyone's ever seen. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.